Common sense isn't always common practice. And this is why we have to go back to the fundamentals sometimes before we can get to those advanced tactics, before we can get more subtle and into more nuanced things. So the habit is this: write down your goals. Studies show, in fact, a study by Dr. Larson showed that we human beings are literally 42% more likely to achieve our goals if we simply write them down. And this isn't about magic. Well, there is some magic to it, but in a very literal sense, it's about focus. You know, Vishen, one of the things that I did, I had this dream when I was writing the book, which, by the way, I was horrible at writing this book. I was so stressed out. I was putting so much pressure on myself. I wanted so badly to make it as good as it could possibly be. And I was driving myself bonkers. And one of the things I did every morning, I didn't just write down my goals for the book. I had a very specific goal, which was this. I wanted, to the best of my ability, to set up this book to be a #1 New York Times bestseller. And you and I both know, because we have so many friends in the industry and so many authors, you can't control that, you know, especially if you're doing it completely organically, right? It's one of those things you just kind of hope for. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. But here's what I did, Vishen. I took that idea, that simple habit of just writing down goals, and I went further. I wrote down, I am a #1 New York Times bestseller 15 times every single morning in my journal for probably about 18 months. I still have all the journals in my drawers in my house.
15 times every single morning. That is so interesting.
Every morning. And it was using the words, I am. Right? So it was just, I am a #1 New York Times bestselling author. I am a #1 New York Times bestselling author. And my intention was around this book. Again, completely consciously knowing, first of all, that is an arbitrary goal. Second of all, there's a little bit of ego involved. But third of all, I also knew that if I could at least get on the list or maybe get to be #1, the most important thing for me wasn't about the title for myself. It was about the fact that that would get this book and this message into more hands. It would give it that extra little bit of credibility that would hopefully get this idea out. And one of the things I wrote about in the beginning of the book was this. You know, a friend of mine who is the CEO of Shopify, I ran into him in New York while I was working on the book. And by working on the book, I mean stressing out over it. And Toby is his name. He's like, you know, what are you working on? I said, I'm working on this book. And he's like, why are you writing a book? He's like, that's a huge project. Your business is going great. You have so many other things going on. Like, why did you say yes to this? And I said, Toby, you know what? If I were to get hit by a bus tomorrow, and I could only leave one thing behind, it would be this idea. If I can do a good enough job explaining this philosophy, this belief, and the profound transformation that it can spark in every human being, then I can be like riding off on the unicorn, my cosmic next adventure, going like, all right, I did it, peace. Taking it back to 2010. But that was the feeling I had. So, you know, this idea of writing that down every single morning. And it was like 5 a.m., you know, and sometimes I would be so blurry eyed and I didn't want to do it, but I did it every single morning, 15 times. And when the New York Times list came out the week after we published Vishen, I like broke down in the ugly cry. Like I could not even breathe. I was partially exhausted because we were on tour and I was traveling around and doing just, you know, like a ton of stops or whatever. And partially just so humbled and so emotionally, just like an emotional release. So that's the habit. The habit, it's so simple. Write down your goals. If you want to supercharge it, if you want to take it to that next level and you have a singular goal that you're working on right now that is more important to your heart than anything else, write it down 15 times a day. We all know we have something called the reticular activating system, that part of our brain that helps us sift and sort what's important and what's not. And on the most basic level, writing your top goal down every single day 15 times will give you the focus that you need every morning to not get distracted by shiny objects and to do everything in your power to activate that goal and to help bring it to life.
Back in college, I had some nasty nights doing shots of this awful cinnamon-flavored liqueur called Goldschlager. It's pretty much disgusting. Now, when you compare your path with someone else's, you're basically drinking Comparschlager, which is like 100 times worse for you than Goldschlager. And I gotta say, that is not easy to do. Now, you know that you've been doing shots of Comparschlager when you're left with a major comparison hangover, which is what you're experiencing right now. Now, comparison is where all of this I should be further ahead by now BS stuff comes from. And I guarantee you, if you stop doing shots of Comparschlager to a very large extent, you're gonna stop feeling all this angst and anxiety and hopelessness. They say comparison is the thief of joy. I say it's the hamburglar of happiness. It will not rest until it takes all of your self-esteem, makes off with it into the night, and leaves you doing the ugly cry in the corner. So you might be asking yourself, well, how do you stop comparing? It's pretty simple. You have got to put blinders on, because constantly looking to the right or to the left is actually what's slowing you down, and you need to focus on your own game. So if you really want to do a comparison cleanse, try this. Do a total social media detox and stop following or looking at people who you tend to compare yourself to. Don't pick up magazines or watch TV shows that portray some unrealistic ideal of perfection. Do not go actively searching for things that you know are going to leave you feeling upset. Now, I know that this takes discipline and it takes constant vigilance, but I gotta tell you, commit to this and I promise you will feel better than you've ever felt before, and you're gonna have more time and energy to make your dreams come to life. Sometimes the only way to create what you really want means walking away from the sure thing you already have. Now, before we dive into this, I want to share a little line from Jim Collins, the author of the classic book, Good to Great. Jim says, "Good is the enemy of great and is why so many things don't become great. We don't have really great schools because we have good schools. We don't have great companies because we have so many good ones. And when we look back over a life and see if it's a great one, we don't see many because it's just so easy to settle for a good one." Now, if we unpack this a bit, we'll see that there's two main factors that keep us trapped in good land. Number one is comfort. Whether it's a certain amount of money that you're used to making or a warm body next to you when you're watching Game of Thrones, sometimes it's hard to walk away from the sure thing you already have because you're not sure if you're going to find something out there that's better to fill the void. Number two is what I call OPE, other people's expectations. Tough to ignore, but fun to dance to. The reason OPE is so hard to break free from is because we don't want to disappoint people, we don't want to let them down, and of course we don't want to rock the boat. But if you want to shift anything from good to great, you've got to be willing to shake some shiz up. Which is exactly what I had to do when I walked away from over $1 million in revenue. Yes, people were disappointed, and yes, people thought I was crazy pants. Little side note, if people think you're crazy pants, you are probably wearing the right pants.
That's deep.
So here's the story. Back in the day, I had two awesome programs. One was an annual conference that we held at Donna Karen's Urban Zen Center, and the other was a year-long mentorship and travel program called Adventure Mastermind. Both of these programs sold out each year with a waiting list. They were fun, they were life-changing, and they were like nothing else on the market, and they were both really profitable. However, I was having this inner tug inside that it was time for me to clear the decks and work on new projects that would allow me to change as many lives as possible. Now, I'm not gonna front, this was not easy to do. A, $1 million is a lot of freaking money, and B, I love what I do, and it was hard for me to disappoint so many people who wanted to take those programs but then wouldn't have a chance to. So I couldn't deny what I knew to be true, which was that it was time for me to walk away. And that's what I did. Now check this out. About a week or so after I decided to take those programs off the market, I got a call from Oprah's folks to be on Super Soul Sunday. Coincidence? Maybe, or maybe it was meant to be, because you can't have really amazing stuff show up in your life if you don't have room for it. So let's wrap this up with a few things to keep in mind. First of all, we always say that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But if it ain't broke, it doesn't mean that you should keep it. Furthermore, things don't have to be crashing and burning around you in order for you to walk away. You can leave on a high note, things don't have to get dramatic, and they don't have to get crazy. Second, as Jim Collins said, good is the enemy of great. Complacency can be a curse, so watch out for it. Here's the reality check that hit me like a ton of bricks. All of the joy and excitement and fun that we want in life never comes from external circumstances. It always comes from the energy and the attention and the consciousness that we bring into each and every moment. So Lori, I talked about this a lot, and if you really want to solve this problem, I need you to go read page 10 in my book, Make Every Man Want You. It's all about making isness your business. So what does that mean? Making isness your business means that you show up in each moment and you do this moment like you friggin' mean it. That means you bring your A game. That means you bring your full enthusiasm, your attention, your love to whatever you're doing, wherever you are, and whoever you're with. Why? Because all pain and frustration and annoyance in our life comes from resisting the moment. It comes from saying, this moment isn't how it should be. But guess what? The moment already is. So you only have two choices in life. You can either resist it and be freaking miserable, or you can engage with the moment and have a damn good time. In fact, make it an engagement party.